All right, welcome everyone. Holding by Book of Leviticus Chapter 16, verse 8. Again, I want to welcome everyone. Holding by Book of Leviticus Chapter 16, verse 8. We're still speaking about the two he-goats, as the Torah tells us. Right? Because the Torah says, Nas and Aaron, Ashnei Aseirim, Goralos, Gorecha La Hashem, Gorecha La Azazel. Right? Aaron plays lots upon the two he-goats, one lot to Hashem, the other going to Azazel. So we're in the middle of the Rebbeinu B'chai, going through, pretty much going through the Ramban, the long Ramban over here, explaining this whole thing, what exactly Azazel is and what it represents. So we mentioned last week, and that is that the intention over here, we have to remember there's no sacrifice, right? There's no sacrifice being given. There's a meaning to Azazel. There's a sacrifice that is a sin offering, right? That is given on Yom Kippur, right? That's the first of the goats. That's the goat Lashem. And the second goat, Lazazel, cannot be for the sake of quote unquote Azazel. Why? Because what would that sound like? That would sound like idolatry, right? 100%. So the sacrifices and everything we do, sacrifices in general, but pretty much anything we do, any mitzvah, right, that we do is l'shem Hashem, should be for the sake of God, for the sake of heaven. So it can't be, even though the Torah says, Goro Echad LaHashem, the first lot is going to go for Hashem, Goro Echad LaZazel. In the second to Azazel. Now, what does that sound like? What does that sound like in the vernacular? Sounds like in the vernacular, what would we say? We would say that it's going to some entity. But it can't be. Right? To the Rebbeinu B'chai, the name of the Ramban, cannot be, God forbid. Because all our prayers, all our service going to God himself. No intermediaries, right? We don't have intermediaries, right? It's another religion, but we don't have other intermediaries. So therefore, Lazazel does not mean to another entity. Now, it could be. We've seen a number of times where the Torah is going to tell me, like this, that let's say, I shouldn't say let's say, the Torah says, Book of Genesis, let us make man in our image. Now, what's the problem with that statement? Problem with that statement is, who's God talking to? Who's we? Maybe, the English will be happy. It's the English we, right, etc. But who's we over here? God says, let us make man in our image. So who's he talking to? So Rashi, others say he's talking to the heavenly court. He's showing humility by talking to the heavenly court. It's a good thing that I should make man. To the bad thing. Does God have to speak to anybody? No. Doesn't have to speak to anybody. God doesn't have to speak to the heavenly court. Doesn't have to show his humility. We see also God says, let's go down, let's see what's going on in Sodom. Who's he talking to? Again, he's talking to the heavenly court, but there, commentaries ask, okay, couldn't people make a mistake? Couldn't people make a mistake and think that God is talking, people make the mistake and think there's another God. There's more than one God. Polytheism in the vernacular. So a person could make a mistake. So doesn't the Torah have to be careful for such a thing? Nope. Why not? Because if someone wants to make a mistake, they'll make a mistake. Everyone's got free will. Now, it could be, it's there. Language is there, place for a test. To see if people are going to say, oh, look, it's only really talking about one God, showing God's humility, or a person can make the mistake. And a person can say, maybe it's talking about more than one God, multiple deities, so to speak, and a person can make that mistake. Now, if a person makes that mistake, let's make clear, are they liable? They're liable. God didn't tell them to make such a mistake. They made their own mistake. What? God has to spell everything out. Everything has to be crystal clear. We have free will, right? We can make our own choices. We can make good choices, bad choices. But there's going to be repercussions when we make a bad choice. In any case, here the Rabbeinu Bachai says, again, this is all part of the Ramban, that the Rabbeinu Bachai says, you can't say, Lazazel means its own entity. That would be idolatry. Many times in the Torah says, right, it's against idolatry. Right, and it says in the Book of Exodus, chapter 22, verse 19. Right, it says, when you make a sacrifice to God, it's only going to go to him. Meaning, no intermediaries. Right, because here the Rebbeinu Bachai says, if a person had intention for an intermediary, and they're sacrificing to that, the service not accepted. Not a good sacrifice. I'd say further, it's disgusting. It's an abomination, right? That's what it says, what we saw before. What the Ramban brought down. The Or Chaim HaKadosh brought down as well. It says in Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 27. What does it say over there? Zevach Rashayim Toeva. Sacrifice, someone who's evil, is an abomination. God doesn't accept sacrifices from evil people. Doesn't want sacrifices from evil people. Right? Therefore, and even if they would, say, maybe they're repenting, maybe. Right? Maybe we'll cut them some slack. Right? Maybe that's the case. Maybe that'll be the case, okay? But essentially, a sacrifice from someone evil is disgusting. It's an abomination. It says Rebbeinu Bachai further. That's what it's talking about, all the sacrifices. All the sacrifices a person would give, who are they for? They have to be for the sake of God himself. God himself, he's the only one. Right? There's no one else except him. Right? He's unique. He's the first, he'll be the last. No other gods. Right? As the Torah says in the Ten Commandments, you have no other gods before me. False gods, obviously. But he's the only one. Right? Interesting enough, what does the Torah say at the beginning? Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Torah tells me, Breshis bara Elokim eis hashamayim ve'eis haaretz. God created the heaven and the earth. Well, what was before that? What was before God creating the heaven and the earth? God, what was he doing? The commentary says he's busy building, destroying worlds. That's what he's doing. But to say that there was somebody before him, right? Or God forbid, right, that he's created from something, means he's not independent. Means he's not unique. Means that God does not have absolute power. Right? And that means that would go against first of the Rambam's 13 principles. Right? 13 principles of faith. God is unique. Or let's say better. God is absolute. God has no need. Right? There's nothing outside of him. Right? Totally nothing outside of it. So God is unique. God is absolute. Let's say better. God is absolute. Over here. So any service to God, i.e. in this case, sacrifices, are going to God himself. So then he says, maybe you're going to tell me, maybe other things will accept this as well. In other words, maybe, we'll say by other intermediaries, maybe they can accept it, even though even though then we have power because God wills their power. In other words, the sun, the stars, wind, fire, these things do not have independent power. Right? The Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, makes clear. He says in the way of God, he says like this. He says these things have power, but they're not independent. In other words, the person may think, like Pharaoh and others, God gave power to these things and he let them be in charge because he disappeared. Why did God disappear? God forbid. He disappeared because he's too lofty to deal with this world. He's got to deal with black holes. He's got to deal with the earth staying on its axis so it doesn't get too close to the sun, too far away from the sun. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. God's busy with nature. He's busy with all kinds of things. What does he need us? What does he need this world for? He's busy doing all kinds of things. So therefore, the mistake is they'll say, well, God's got other intermediaries that he gives power to, right? I.e., the wind, fire, water, all these things. So God let them deal with the world. Let them do what they wanted, right? As if to say they themselves are independent entities. And the reality is, says the Ramchal, no, there's no independent entity here. Not a physical entity, not a spiritual entity. Now, spiritual entity, what does that mean? It means that the Ramchal brings down there about spiritual forces and, gives a little bit, speaks a little bit about how they work, how they interact, etc. But spiritual forces, i.e., let's say angels are also programmed spiritual. Some are higher than others, right? But essentially, we learn out from Abraham that three Arabs come after he does circumcision. He wants to have guests. He's looking for guests. These three Arabs come dressed up like Arabs, but they're really angels. And what do the angels do? They tell him three things. They tell him he's going to have a child. He's going to have a son. They tell him that one of them says that they're going to overthrow Sodom, and the other is there to heal it. So Raj brings down that explicitly over there. So one thing we learn out is the fact that each angel has one message. They can only do one thing at a time. They can't multitask. In other words, God sends them on, tells them what to do. Tells them, okay, take care of this, go take care of that, do the other thing. God's messengers. So this would knock out the idea that there's such a thing as quote unquote a fallen angel, right? Christians are going to say, of course, that's Mr. S. The Satan, the evil inclination, we're going to speak about him. We're going to get there. The angel of death. But guess what? He's also a messenger. He can't do whatever he wants. What's the obvious proof? Obvious proof he can't do what he wants. We learn out from Job. God says, hey, what do you think of my trusted servant Job? So Mr. S says, come on, let me at him and I'll make him blaspheme in your name. Blaspheme against you. So God says, fine, I'll let you test him. One thing you can't do, you can't kill him. You can do anything you want, but you can't kill him. Right? That's a direct command. Can't go against what God says. So, it takes away his kids, makes him suffer, takes away his livelihood, all these things. But it means that he's a messenger. That's what he does. The other thing he does is tries to get us to sin. Right? Very good at that. Doesn't need me to agree. Right? Certainly not. But so he's busy taking people's lives when he has to. And he's busy trying to make a person sin. So they make the mistake, the Christians make the mistake, and they're going to say, well, Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7, where it says God created evil. They mistranslate it like many things. Certainly like many things the Christians mistranslate. So why do they mistranslate it? Very simple, goes against their agenda. 100% goes against their agenda, because if we're going to say God is all good, what do you do with evil? So a person will say, well, does that mean God is evil? No. So why did God put evil in the world? Says the Ramchal Derech Hashem. Again, the Ramchal there says, God put evil in the world in order for us to have free will. Right? In other words, if everything was good, there was no evil, we'd be doing God's will all the time, 100% of the time. That means we have no free will. Now, does that mean someone could tap into evil and do terrible things? Yes. Is that what God wants? No. But there'll be repercussions. There'll be repercussions for what they do. Evil does not run rampant. At some point, God will step in and say, okay, I let it go on long enough, and God will stop it. Right? It's not forever. It certainly doesn't go on forever. Right? But the point is, what does the prophet Isaiah say? God created evil. Oh, we got a problem with the Christians. Or let's say better, Christians got a problem. Why? Because evil is Mr. S. He's a fallen angel. We just said before, no such thing. How can an angel go against what God wants? How can an angel do what they want? They don't have free will. They're programmed, spiritual DNA, Kaufman's language, right? They're programmed. They're messengers. That's what they are. They do God's bidding. They can't go outside of that. And if they think they're going to, it's not going to happen. Right? So the Christians got a problem. They say, well, what do you do with evil? If God is all good, you can't say there's evil. Why not? Doesn't mean God is evil. Right? That's certainly a mistake. But God punishes. There are repercussions. We say every day, second paragraph of the Shema. Right? We've said this many times. God says you do the right thing, fine. You have water in its proper time. Everything will be good. You do the wrong thing, it's over, as we would say in Boston. What would happen? Finished. God has to punish, just like a parent sometimes has to punish a child. Right? There's discipline. You can't just do whatever you want. Don't think you're going to get away with, everything that you do. There's reward, there's punishment. There are repercussions, which nobody ever wants to hear. But there are repercussions for what we do. Total repercussions. So again, if God is good, which we believe he is, as the Chofetz Chaim says, only good comes out from him. So if only good comes out from him, why do we see bad things? Why do we perceive things as bad? Because to us, that's the way it looks. That's the way it looks. But nothing bad comes out of God. Everything is calculated. Calculate is the last detail. Problem is, we're not privy to that. And the question that comes up a lot, we're not going to deal with, but the question that comes up a lot is, okay, if a person is going through this, going through that, if God does things measure for measure, that everything is judged according to a hand's breadth, so to speak, then if that's true, why did this happen? Or why did that happen? And what's the answer? No one's going to like. We don't know. Many times, we're never going to fathom, right? In 100 lifetimes, 200 lifetimes, 1,000 lifetimes, we are never going to fathom why things happen. We're not. Some things it's because we did it. Could be some things are more obvious that we can see. And there are many things that may have nothing to do with us. It has to do with our soul makeup. It has to do with what our soul's doing here. So you're going to say, but I didn't sign up for that. Okay, so what? So what if you signed up for it or not? It could be. That's what our soul needs to go through in order to be fixed up for whatever it did previously. So a person can say, I've been through so much and so many different things. Really, if I ever see my soul and I would grab its throat and scream and yell. And one of my rabbis once, very much steeped in Kabbalah, said if you looked him in the face, you wouldn't recognize him. So I said, that's not really the point. And he's like, no, that is the point. That's exactly the point, right? So you're going to say, wow, we must have, our souls must have been so messed up. I had to go through this, that, and the other thing. Now, there are plenty of things, I'm sure, that we go through because we ourselves did it. We're not going to just blame it on, what happened in a previous life, coming back to this world. Okay, that's called pass the buck. That some things could be like that. I'm not saying not. Well, we can't say everything's like that. Unfortunately, we are creatures of habit. So we do things and we can spiral out of control, but it's based on what we did. I think the Ramban in the book of Job says over there that, his Job's friends come and try and comfort him. And, some say, well, maybe it's just your bad luck. Maybe the way the constellations were set up. This is why you have to go through it. Could be this, could be that. I mean, it doesn't seem why they comfort him so well. But in the end, the Ramban says a person could have claims against God. And what will the claim be? The claim will be, look what you did over here. Right? We'll blame God for certain things we've gone through. They'll say, you put me through this. And what's God going to answer? Maybe sometimes they'll say, yeah, that's true. I put you through this for this reason, that reason, the other reason. Right? But the Ramban there says there are going to be plenty of times where a person will make such a claim. God says, I didn't tell you to do this. I didn't tell you to be reckless. I didn't tell you to, whatever it was. I didn't stop you, right? The Gemara says, you want to go in the right direction, God is going to help you. You want to go in the wrong direction, God is not going to stop you. You might have transgressed Kaufman's 614th commandment, and that is, don't be stupid. You did something stupid. What do you want from me? I didn't tell you to do it. You didn't have enough free lives, so to speak, in order for me to save you over here from this demise. I didn't take a lot of your credits in this world. So you suffered. They went through a difficult time. You went through a really hard time. Okay, but who says I had to stop you? I have no obligation to stop you. You did something foolish. You did something foolish. You want me to stop you? Why should I stop you? Right now, it could be. I might have to stop you because it's so reckless, it might have cost you your life. Right? You go drag racing, let's say. Whatever the case is. You put your life in danger. I didn't tell you to put your life in danger. You did it for the thrill. Okay? Right? But you could pay a serious price, like with your life, if you're not careful. So God will say, okay, I'll save you from this. We're going to take off points. Let's say you had 100,000 points. I'll take off a couple lives. So now you're down to like 40,000. But I kept you alive. Right? That's how it works. If you don't have any bonus points, could be. That's it. It's over. Right? Story I always tell. Somebody jumps in. A football player, former football player jumps in, saves somebody's life. Somebody's drowning. There's only one problem. He himself didn't know how to swim. Now, when I went to camp, took a course in junior life saving. You jump in when you know what you're doing. Because the person who's drowning, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to try and drown you so they can survive. But for goodness sakes, I understand. You want to help someone. You want to save someone. You don't jump in if you don't know how to swim. You do whatever you can, but you don't jump in. That's putting your life in danger. You're not allowed to put your life in danger. If it's a doubt, whether your life's in danger or not, different issue. But if you're putting your life in danger and you drown, if I was playing God, I put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache, I'd be laughing. I'd be laughing and crying at the same time. Right? Crying because you forfeited your life for no reason. And laughing, saying you don't know how to swim. For goodness sakes, you don't know how to swim. How can you jump in? So why didn't God save him? Right? Let's ask the question. I'll give an answer here. Why did God not save him? Did he have the right idea? Had the right idea. Right? He had a big heart. Problem is you don't jump in if you don't know how to swim. So God could be. God didn't save him because he didn't have enough credit. He didn't have enough lives, not enough extra lives. So if he had no extra lives and he's got no merit to be in this world, God says, okay, your time's up. Doesn't matter what age he is. And no ramifications at all. Who cares? Could have been 25, could have been 30, could have been younger. Right? He didn't have a merit to be in this world anymore. God could have saved him. He could have. Right? I'll go on record as saying God could have saved him. But if he's got no redeeming qualities to be saved, why is he going to save him? Why is he going to save him? He doesn't have an obligation to. Because he sees what's going to come out of him or not or whatever, and he's okay, I'm going to take him down. He had no reason to survive. So a lot of times we're going to say, God did this, God did that, and it might be true. May very well be true. But see, we can't pass the buck 100%. Passing the buck 100% says, I don't have to take responsibility. You know, we call that in the vernacular, that's called Christianity. I can pass the buck. You know, JC can come to this world. He can come to this world, and guess what? He can die for my sins. That means I don't have to do anything. Right? That means that my actions don't matter. He came, died for my sins. Beautiful. There's no repercussions for me. Say a few Hail Marys, I'm good. You know, a little bit of confession, give some money over. Beautiful. No repercussions for your actions. Judaism, absolutely the opposite. Everything we do, everything we think can be held either for us or against us. Right? It's all about actions, all about what I do. It's not about what I can do what I want and give it over to someone else and they can pay the price. They can pay the price. For me, I get off scot-free. No such thing. Right? No such thing over here. Right? So what's the point? The point is, a lot of things in our lives we may not understand. And a person may say, well, I didn't sign up for this. Well, you know what? Too bad. No matter we signed up for it or not, this is what we've done. Right? This is what's going on. Are we in control? You know, it's Mission Pirkei Avos, as it says in ethics for our fathers, we're born against our will, we die against our will. Right? In parentheses, Kaufman would say you still have to live. Good. So even if you still have to live, you're born against your will. You have a choice who your parents are? No. Siblings? No. Socioeconomic situation? No. You're not in control of anything. Right? You grow up, you know, go out on your own. We still think we're in control. I do this, I do that. Yeah, we can make bad decisions. Thinking that, you know, they're not bad decisions. But the reality is we can make bad decisions. And what do bad decisions do? They make us make other bad decisions. And it can be a spiral effect. Right? And a person can get flattened like a pancake over and over and over. Right? It's like being in a bad, you know, Freddy Krueger movie. Right? Back in the dream and again and again and again. Right? So what's the point? The point is we have to learn from mistakes. Start again. You know, famous story. It's a famous story of Noah Weinberg, of blessed memory. Noah Weinberg started Yeshiva Eish Torah, right? But he started 3 other yeshivas before that, and they all failed. They all failed for different reasons. You might have thought, okay, you know, somebody like that tried this, tried that, didn't work. But one thing finally worked. You know, learn from his mistakes, whatever it was, you know, and this went. You know, you take somebody like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students. They all died. 24,000 students. Imagine, you know, between Passover and Shavuot. So imagine more than 700 students a day are dying, dropping like flies. And what did he do? Gave rabbinic ordination to 5 more students, and they're the ones that passed down oral law that we have today. He could have given up, easily could have given up. Imagine he worked all those years. You know, he's gone for 24 years. He amassed all these students. Must have been broken, can't imagine. Put all his efforts building up these students, and they all died. They all died. He didn't give up. Could have. You know, I can understand after a day or 2 or 3, you know, already 2,000 students died. You know, I can understand, I can understand at that point already. 2,000 students. They're dropping like flies one after another. How is he not broken? You know, pales in comparison to what we go through. Not saying, you know, not saying our trials are nothing, but think about such a thing. Think about someone who put all his effort, you know, all his effort, all his power into building students. And even though the Gemara says they didn't show respect one for another, right? Still hard to imagine how great they were. How could they not show respect? Whatever the case was, that there was a decree that they should die. How does a person like that get out of bed? How does a person like that function? Right? So a person will say, he had superhuman strength. He's one of the greatest people ever created in the history of man. Okay. But you don't think he had a tinge of sadness? And maybe he could have questioned God, why are you doing this? What's going on? So many upright individuals could have been Torah giants in their own rights. The next generation gone, wiped off the face of the map. Again, I'm not saying what we go through is nothing, but think about it. He got up and he still went on, and he still carried on. Superhuman strength. See, we don't even know what we're capable of. The problem is we live in a tissue generation. We're very weak. We are very weak. So what? We go through all kinds of things and still come out. Still come out standing. Some people, okay, they get beaten down in life. They stay beaten down in life. Not an easy thing. Not saying this is easy by any stretch. But in the bigger scheme of things, what does God want? He wants us to persevere. He wants us to continue regardless of what goes on. Regardless of what goes on around us. So says Rabbeinu Bachai here, we'll go a little bit further. And he says, don't think for a second we're worried over here in this verse, we're talking about idolatry. He says, don't think for a second when it says, Goro Echad La'azazel, that this Goro, this Lot, so to speak, is going to go to Azazel, i.e., to another entity, to totally another entity, i.e., that would be what? Idolatry. Clear as day, it would be idolatry, right? Idolatry forbidden, right? 100% forbidden. Well, I don't think such a thing. So he says that what's the intention when a person does sacrifice or anything that they're doing for service to God? It's for God himself, right? Nothing else. And both of these sacrifices, well, one's not really a sacrifice, gets pushed off a cliff, but he says both of these goats, says Rabbeinu Bachai, are a gift to God. One is a sacrifice, the other gets pushed off a cliff. But it's not a sacrifice over here. So what do we see? So says Rabbeinu Bachai, the intention over here for both is for God's sake. For his special name. It's done for his sake, 100%. And it's not done for anything else. Not done for any other reason except for God himself. So don't make the mistake. It says, Goro Echad L'Hashem, Goro Echad L'Azazel, they're going to two different places. The fact that it says this is going to be a lot for God, the other for Azazel, means it's the same. They're both going for the sake of God. It's like, don't make that mistake. That's what it's for. They're both for the same thing. That's why over here he says that the Kohen is doing two things here, right? He's giving both as a gift to God. Not only that, he's doing it by lots. Why? Because it gets split up by lots over here. This one's going to go to Hashem, right? This one is going to go to Azazel, right? It's going to get thrown off the cliff. But who's essentially for? It's also for atonement. So if it's for atonement, guess what? It's also for God. Both are for God. And that's why it says in Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 33. It says over there, in his bosom, he's going to take this girl and from God comes all judgments. See, this is kind of hard in a certain way. Why does it say for God's going to be all judgment? Because even if things look bad, right, and we live in a scary world today, I'm not going to say, years ago it wasn't scary. Whatever, it's a scary world. But guess what? Everything that happens, well, guess what? When things happen, it comes from God. 100%. It comes from Him. All judgment comes from Him. Right? So if that's the case, then we asked the question before. Right? Well, what was the question? The question is, these things that happen that look really bad and natural, quote unquote, catastrophes and disasters and all kinds of things, they emanate from God. They come from Him. So now people say, what, God's a masochist? Again, we don't know how these things work. The Rambam says the laws of repentance. The Rambam makes very clear that there's an equilibrium. There's a scale. There's a scale of good and evil. Right? When a person does the right thing, the scale goes down on one side. Person does the wrong thing, scale goes down on the other side. Now, each country, each state, each province, whatever, each one has a scale for them. So therefore, if the scale goes down on the side of evil for however long, then again, we don't know how to judge this, we don't know how to look at this, but God's going to say, okay, I've had enough. Evil's running rampant, I'm going to take care of things. I'm going to bring some sort of, catastrophe. Make people wake up. And that's what it is, the form of judgment, right? Whether it's a tsunami, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's an earthquake. We see that, a lot of people seem to be dying in Europe because of the heat, right? Tremendous amount of heat. You see a lot of people suffering in St. Louis, a lot of rain, right? Tremendous amount of rain. It's judgment. Climate is judgment. Not just, it's global warming. It's this. Who's in charge of it? Who runs it? Who's taking care of nature? God is. So yeah, one place it can make it, extremely hot, extremely cold. It can make it rain like no tomorrow. The water's nowhere to go. Yeah, quote unquote, they'll say, or people will say, oh, that's a natural disaster. Why don't you say it's from God and it's punishment? Oh, don't hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. Say, well, they're innocent people that may get destroyed in the process. So what do we believe? We believe that every bullet has its place. Every missile has its place, has its mark, right? And you can't say, wow, I was at the wrong place, the wrong time. There is such an idea that when, the Gemara says, when the angel of death runs wild, can even technically take innocent people, with them, right? But without that, there's no such thing as innocence. How do you know what those children were that died in such a thing? How do you know what they went through before? What their souls went through before? And this is atonement for them. You can say, come on, that's Kabbalah, that's this. But what about the families left? True? It's tragic. No one's going to say in this world it's not tragic. And if you look at it at face value, yeah, it looks horrific. And that's when people will say, come on, there can't be a God. He's evil. Look what he does over here. Give an example. A book I would never recommend anyone to read. And that is When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Written by Kushner. He wrote this book. He had a child. God forbid no one should go through it. Had a child born with progeria. Progeria, a disease where a child ages exponentially. So basically you have an 80-year-old in the body of a 10-year-old. Right? And the child doesn't live so long. So basically his conclusion was, well, I looked into my actions. I'm not such a bad person. He was my wife. So it must be God doesn't run the world. That was his conclusion. And he sold millions. Became a bestseller, right? Became a bestseller. Now, what's the problem? Totally against Torah, right? Maybe he didn't go through the end of the book of Job, last 2 chapters, where God chastised him and said, you're not in control of anything. I control this, I control that. Can you do that? No. So what does God say to Job? He says, shut up. You got nothing to say. Just keep your mouth shut. You have nothing to say over here. I'm the one in charge. I'm the one who runs the world. You have no idea. No idea. Now, again, no one is going to say that what he went through is not a tragedy. 100%. The way we see it, 100% is a tragedy. Right? Sad. No one should go through it. But the conclusion to say, well, I'm not such a bad person, and, it must be stuff happens. Now, even if we explain about reincarnation, even if we explain, well, this is what the soul had to go through, and now the soul gets fixed up and whatever, that's a small consolation. It's a small consolation. Because what would he say back? I don't care about that. I want my son back. I don't want him to suffer. I want him back. Okay, not coming back. It's tragic the way we see it. I'm not saying, God forbid this happens to someone there whistling Dixie and saying, oh, this is the greatest thing that's happened to me, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it's a trauma, no question, right? But again, in the bigger scheme of things, some people come to this world, in 5 years, they fix up what they need to. Some in less, some in more. As my Rebbe would say, why do people die young and die old? They don't die at the same age. So a person will repent. So a person will look at the world, get shaken up a little bit. And they won't think, they're here forever. Fame, right? They're going to think they live forever. No, they're not here forever. Right? I feel bad telling everyone, well, guess what? We're all going to die. Everyone's going to die. Some later, some earlier, whatever the case is. Death never should have been. Adam eating from the tree. God goes to plan B. Plan B is death. Death never should have been. Okay. But, that developed a whole system of reward and punishment, right? And our actions matter. And they have purpose. And they have meaning. And all that. Again, is that going to answer someone, whose child died young? No. It'll be somewhat of a consolation. Certainly not a full consolation, maybe even not half consolation. Right? But the question is, what am I living for? What am I here for? What am I doing? What's my purpose? When I see things around me, if God wants to punish somebody, he does it in a number of steps. First step is he'll do something around you, make you wake up. If that doesn't work, God could, hit your pocket. Right? He can hit your pocket, he can struggle financially. If that doesn't work, what can God do? He can strike you in the body. He can make you suffer physically in this world. Now, does God want that? No. Does God want to hit you in the pocket? No. Doesn't want to do any of these things. Sometimes we have to be woken up. Sometimes we have to hear things, see things maybe that, are not pleasant. And that's why some people say it's such a, we're living in such a messed up world. So, the prophet says, eat, drink, and be merry, lest tomorrow I die. So I might as well enjoy life because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Right? We have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring. But at the end of the day, whatever we're here for, right? Whatever I'm here for, every soul has a mission, right? And that mission is going to differ. Whatever someone's mission is, it's not going to be a mission for someone else. Everyone's here for whatever purpose, for whatever it is. Now, could be some could help others. They could help others with their purpose, but they can't fulfill it. They can't do it for them. Each one has to fulfill whatever they need to do, whatever they need to fix up, in their soul, which means, or could mean, someone once explained to me, say, how do I know what my purpose is? How do I know what I'm doing here? So the answer that was given to me, or one answer was, think about the thing that's most difficult for you to do. The most difficult thing in the world. You'd rather take glass and split your eyeballs or, cut your veins open or whatever, rather than do it. Now, does that mean that's what you're doing here? No. Doesn't necessarily mean that. But it's not going to be something like, oh, I'm here to fix this up. Very good. It's going to be so easy. We're not going to be getting, that's not the case. Right? Is it going to be so impossible we can't do? I don't know about that. We may think, certain things are impossible, but, they're not. Imagine, I'll give an example. Imagine, I'll tell the following story, even better. Tell the following story. During the 6-Day War. I think it was during the 6-Day War, where a lot of people in Jerusalem in bunkers being shelled all over the place. And people feared for their lives, no question. So there's a story with Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, blessed memory, who was a head of the yeshiva in the Mir in Jerusalem, and they're in this bunker. A lot of people in this bunker, and this woman whose husband, it was a recalcitrant husband, refused to give his wife, for whatever reason, probably just spite, give his wife a bill of divorce. And this woman suffered, she couldn't remarry. Right? A Jew is not allowed to remarry. A woman not allowed to remarry if her husband doesn't give her a get. If he dies, different issue. But if they get divorced, God forbid, well, let's say they get divorced, he has to give her a bill of divorce. If he doesn't give her a bill of divorce, she can't remarry. I mean, he really can't remarry either, but she can't remarry. So she's called the chained woman, what we call an aguna. So, without going into all the details about that, this woman gets up and she screams to God and says, I forgive my husband for all the pain he's caused me. And the fact that he's not giving me a get, I forgive him. As if to say, you save us, I forgive him. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz there said, that's the reason we were saved. That's the reason nothing happened over here. Because this woman went well beyond her comfort zone. Well beyond. She went against her nature. And it would be against anybody's nature. Somebody that cruel, or someone caused whatever. So, we're talking something, egregious over here. Something horrific, right? No woman should have to go through such a thing. That, she doesn't get a bill of divorce, she can't remarry. Right? Nobody should have to go through such a thing. Unfortunately, there are people out there that are spiteful, that are mean, and they don't care. They may even do certain things to their kids. There's a story of somebody, this woman comes to my Rebbe and says, my father said in front of 2 witnesses, my daughter, meaning me, is betrothed to such and such a person. So what's the problem? We don't know who this person is. Now, if a father does that for his kids, and he makes a statement like that in front of 2 witnesses, that daughter can never get married. She can never get married because you don't know. You don't know who it is. So I told my Rebbe, I got a great idea. Do like the Rambam. Hold the guy over a cliff, beat him to a pulp, and get him to admit. Get him to admit who the witnesses are. He says, great idea, there's only one problem. Even if we did such a thing, who's to say he's not lying? You don't know if he's telling the truth. He's under duress. Can't do it. So there are no loopholes here. This person did something to spite his wife, spite his daughter. An absolute horrific thing. The Rebbe said the only thing I could do was sit there and cry with her. That's all I could do. You can't turn the Torah into a pretzel. So someone's going to say, so let's say by a bill of divorce. So let the woman initiate. Well, the Gemara says, who has a more difficult time making a commitment, a man or a woman? A man. So if he makes the kedushin, he sanctifies her. So too, he has to break it. They're going to say, but some people could break the system. Some people could. We're not saying not. So there'll be some people who say, well, we got to change that. We don't want to have any of these chained women. We want women to initiate, or even better, we'll make a prenuptial agreement. What's a prenuptial agreement over here? To say that if God forbids they get divorced, the husband agrees to go to ex-rabbinical court and go through the proceedings. Now, the problem is, in the modern Orthodox community, this has been on the books for probably 25, 30 years. In the ultra-Orthodox community, they didn't like the way it was written. In different ways, it was more problematic. They're also going to find a way to do it eventually. I don't think they found quite a way yet, but if you can't do it in such a way, right? So could someone abuse the system? Yeah. Someone could abuse the system. Doesn't mean you just change it. Like a person changes their shirt. Oh, I don't like this. Let's change this. Let's change that. Right? You got to have halachic parameters to be able to do it. You can't just do whatever I want. You can tell me someone could mess up the system. Okay. Someone could mess up the system. There are certain things you are allowed to do. You can excommunicate the person. You can make sure, he doesn't get called up to the Torah in synagogue. People stay away from him. These things don't have as much power as they used to. Definitely true. But there are organizations that, work very hard. To, take care of these situations. But I don't want to get sidetracked here. The point is, this woman went well beyond what she was obligated to do. Put in a horrific situation. Right? She gets up and says to God himself, and says, God, I forgive him. Right back to that story. God, I forgive him for not giving me a get, for not giving me a bill of divorce. So it says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, that's why we were saved. Because of this woman. And the suffering that she went through, that opened up unbelievable things in heaven. Unbelievable things in heaven. Now imagine, this is going to be a little bit of a jump. You're talking about someone with unbelievable strength. Unbelievable strength of character. Meaning, here, I'm not saying this woman, had someone she wanted to remarry, right? But she's stuck over here. There's nothing she can do unless he's willing to give a bill of divorce. So pretty much she's stuck. And she's suffering. She's suffering tremendously. Now, you take somebody like that who's willing to forego all this and say that she's willing to forgive with a full heart. I would have loved to have been upstairs to see what that did in heaven and what the angels did and how God looked at it. Because that had to uproot unbelievable amount of decrees. Unbelievable amount of terrible things that could have happened based on what this one woman did. No one should ever be in such a situation. But what's the point? The point is that, we're petty in many ways. Someone doesn't, if, we need a favor from someone and we think the person can help them and they don't help us for whatever reason, we get angry. But I'm in dire straits. I need this to be done. I can't help you. There's nothing I can do. Now, you may think there is something they could do. Okay. But why isn't that a sign from God? Okay, this person's not the message. He's not the right shaliach. He's not the right message. So, you go to someone else for help, whatever. You put your best foot forward. Obviously, God's the one who runs the world. We got to remember, God's the one in charge. So if he's the one in charge, he said, okay, he said no over here. So he goes somewhere else. You try and work it out some other way. You see, someone's going to say, but someone caused me such damage. You're right. And obviously, that person, as we see it, as the Chos of Avos brings down in duties of the heart and the gate of bitachon, gate of faith and belief in God. Why are you running after the stick? Right? That's the parable. Person hits a dog with a stick. I don't want to get any, hate emails about, saying, oh, we advocate hitting dogs with sticks. No, it's just a parable. Person hits a dog with a stick. Who's the dog go after? The stick, not the one wielding the power of the stick. So when something happens to us, and we jump up and down and yell and scream and this and that, look what the person did. Why are we yelling at the person? The person's liable, no question, let's say. Person 100% liable. But who's the one pulling the strings here? God just used this person as a stick. God's going to deal with the person. 100% he's going to deal with the person. He'll take care of business, no doubt about it. But he's using the person as a stick. When he uses someone as a stick, the question is, why are we getting upset at the stick? Somebody, we'll make it real graphic. Somebody driving down the street, the corner of your eye, you see a car coming out, goes through a red light, stop sign, bam, hit you right? Hit you right in the front. Cause your car damage. You might be shaken up. Let's say you didn't have to go to the hospital, nothing major, whatever. But what's the first thing? You cut out of the corner of your eye. And let's say even better, you saw the person with a phone in their face. And they were driving, didn't see the stop sign. You're going to be even more mad. We're not going to be more mad. Person was texting, went straight through a stop sign. Let's say. Or they didn't see the stop sign. They weren't paying attention. Whatever the case was. What's the first thing you're going to do? All things being equal, you're not hurt, whatever. You jump out of the car, you start screaming at the person. That's the first thing. Right? And you call them every four-letter word in the book. No, we're human. We're human. What's the Book of Leviticus say? What the Book over there says, in duties of the heart, what does he bring down? He says, you should go up to the person and give them a big hug. Thank them for putting you giving you such a test of working on your emunah and bitachon, working on your faith and belief in God. So what's someone going to ask? What's the $1.5 million or $2 million question over here? They're going to say, who's he talking to? He's talking to the Malchei Hasharis. He's talking to the angels. He's talking to the ministry and angels. We're not angels. We're human. I'm going to rip this person in shreds for what they did. I just got the car washed. This guy ruined my whole front end. Probably it's going to be the end of the car, whatever. And you're thinking all kinds of things, but you're not thinking the right thing. Right? So a person can say, come on. This is not humanly possible. All the levels there does not say this is only for the righteous. And he mentions this many times. Person may think, come on, this is only for the greatest. This is only for the righteous of the righteous. What are you talking about? He's saying this for everybody. Right? So anything that happens in general, that seems to be negative, who do we blame? The person. That's what we do. They did this and they did that. Could be they did. It wasn't my negligence. See, if it's your negligence, that's worse. Then you yourself caused it. Then you got no one else to blame except yourself. So you are the stick. God used you as your own stick. That'd be worse. That'd be 10 times worse. The one thing someone else did it, they're careless, they're causing you damage, one thing. Well, the fact is you did it to yourself. You didn't pay attention, you were careless. We can use use as a parable, use Bitcoin over here. Anyone, I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, but person puts money into Bitcoin. So you need to have, you need a password. Right? A password, obviously, only that you know. Now, what would happen? Let's say you put a lot of money. Let's say you put $500,000. You had $500,000, you put it all in Bitcoin, big mistake. But let's say, I don't know, I'd say put it in the stock market, you can't do that either. Whatever, I always say if you have money, just stick it under your mattress, right? Stick it under your floorboard or something, probably safer. But let's say a person put it in Bitcoin, right? Let's say they put it in Bitcoin. And now let's say you put it in, you say, okay, I want to see how it's doing. I want to see what's going on. You put in the password, it doesn't work. Oh, it must be this password. Put another password, doesn't work. You're going to say, uh-oh. And then Then there's something flashes on the screen. And it says you have two more chances. Two more chances. And if you don't get it, you lose it. Means if you can't get into the account, you lose it. Now, I'm sure there are people out there that have Bitcoin that probably have lost because they didn't remember the password. Now, whose fault is it? I would say if a person would do it, you better have that written down in 8 different places. Put it on Google Drive, put it here, put it in safe places where it can't get erased, where you know exactly where it is. Because imagine you have a nice chunk of money there, and now you can't get to it. Now, wouldn't a person? It'd be one thing, unbeknownst to you, someone hacked in and changed the password. Let's say, or a person outsmarted themselves. Say, no, I'm going to use a different password, and then they forget the password. Now you got one more chance. You got one more chance to get to this money. And the money's there. 100%. 100% the money's there. Right? If you know the money's there, how embarrassed is the person going to be if you don't remember the password? And what would happen? You put it, okay, it must be this one. Last chance. And it says, right? Survey says, and you're toast. And now all the money you worked for, let's say it's years and years, saved up money. And now you can't get to it. Now it's gone. Forget, you didn't lose it in the stock market. You didn't lose it in the bad business deal or whatever. You lost it because you forgot the password. How embarrassing to the person itself are they going to feel? They're going to say they should have been more careful. Yeah, there should have been a lot of things. Didn't happen. Right? Didn't happen. So it's one thing someone else does it to us, and then we go yelling and screaming at that person. It's another thing we do it to ourselves. Now, if we do it to ourselves, this is a lot worse. Why do I say it's a lot worse? Because what could God do over here? God could stop you. God could give it to you on a platter. God could say, could help you find, what this missing password is and give you your money back, right? Or you could say you don't deserve the money. I don't care how hard you worked. In the end, you don't deserve it. It's going to get locked up and no one can get to it. The only people who make the money is Bitcoin. And you lost. So a person would say, why would God do that? Again, I'm not playing God here. But I'm saying that a person, if they did it to themselves, they're going to kick themselves, berate themselves. I'm not going to say they're going to hang themselves. God forbid, commit suicide, right? I guess maybe it depends how much money's there. But if someone did something to us, we can say, okay, in theory, the person is the stick. Person 100% is the stick. God's trying to send me a message, right? He's trying to send me a message through this person. Again, is the person liable for what they've done? Yes. No question about it. They're liable. But God's just using them to get to us. But what if we did something stupid? We ourselves do something careless. Person forgot their password. Person, drove like a maniac on the street that you shouldn't. That it's only 15 kilometers. 15 kilometers or 30 miles, and a person's driving 70, or 50 kilometers an hour. And it's an area, a small area, windy turns. You're a fool. You're an absolute fool for doing such a thing. That's being reckless. Something I ever brought down, right? In this week's parsha, spoke about the fact that there's a Torah obligation to adhere to traffic laws. You might think, why is he telling you that? Shouldn't that be something obvious? Yeah, it is. But people think they're above the law. People think, okay, maybe it's just good advice not to go this fast in certain areas, or whatever the case is. But what's he telling you? And if you don't and you go much faster than you should, you're taking your life in your own hands. That's being reckless. That's a Torah obligation. It's to guard lives, not just your own. But someone gets caught, I don't care if they're in a rush, this, that. What? No one else on the road matters? I'm not saying where, bad road conditions and things happen or whatever. I'm saying people drive like maniacs even in bad road conditions. It boggles the mind. Remember a number of months ago, in the winter, I was up north coming home and like, I was on a bus and it's pouring. Like, cats and dogs can't see, a foot in front of you. Bus drivers don't care. They're driving like no tomorrow. I'm thinking like, what happens if they have to stop short or this? And I'm just like, I'm not going to worry about it. Hopefully, things will be okay. But, there are ways to drive. There are ways to drive. And you drive like a maniac, you're responsible. Even if nothing happens. See, that's the novelty. That's the chiddush. You'll tell me. But that's only if something happens. What if something doesn't happen? They absolutely drive like a maniac and nothing happens, right? If they drive like a maniac and nothing happens, so what's someone going to say? What's someone going to say over here? They're going to say, well, nothing happened. All's good that, all's well that ends well, so to speak. No, it's not all's well that ends well. You're still liable, even though nothing happened. That's being reckless. And the ends don't justify the means. It doesn't matter why. You can say, listen, it's an emergency, this, that, within reason. Within reason. But for goodness sakes, a regular driver just driving because they're in a rush, whatever the case is, they're putting other people's lives plus your own in danger. Right? Who says you're allowed to do that? It's a total prohibition. You have an obligation to guard your life, all the more so other people. Right? So, we could do things. What are we going to answer? What are we going to answer after the fact? Imagine, God forbid, someone was reckless. And let's say they only caused damage to themselves. The car skidded out of control, flipped over a bunch of times, bam, smashed into a tree. Car totally demolished. Let's say you came out with no injuries or very few injuries. So you're lucky. And let's say even better, person necessarily wasn't under the influence of anything. They're reckless. They're 100% reckless over here. So if they're 100% reckless, who are they going to blame? They're going to say what happened before, and I wasn't in my right mind, and something happened, and it drove me off the deep end, and I just want to go out and, give off a little bit of steam. Well, be careful. Be careful over here. You're putting your life in danger, potentially. Putting other people's lives in danger. But who are we going to blame? We got nobody to blame. The only person we have to blame is ourselves. And I don't think people want to do that. I don't think people want to wake up the next day and say, oh, look what happened. Look what I ended up doing. You're right. It shouldn't have been done. 100%. And if we do it to ourselves, it's a lot worse. You're going to say, okay, someone did this to me. I didn't ask for it. Whatever it is. Okay. Right? The only question is, what's our reaction going to be? Is that person liable? The person's liable. Person's liable, 100%. At the same time, the person's a stick. God's getting to us for whatever reason. But he's using that person. So what are we getting upset at the person? Right? And we all have this issue. We all have what to work on this. Because we're all going to react in the same way unless we're in control. Unless we're 100% in control. Right? Which means the following. Which means that I have to control what I think at all times. Even when I sleep. Got to be in control of what I think. That's why it's good to go to sleep with Torah on your lips. So you go to sleep with holiness, not thinking about other things. But again, we live in this world. First, going to say that what you're talking about is not for everybody. I don't know. I don't see sources telling me the other way, telling me it's only for the righteous, and the Torah is only for the righteous. And I have to keep at this level because they're righteous. No. We all have obligations. They're going to say, but who's living up to it? You know what? That doesn't matter. Question is, what am I obligated to do? What's my obligation in this world? My obligation is, my obligation is whether sacrifices, anything else, they're going l'shem Hashem. They're going for God's sake. That's the purpose. That's the only purpose. Because it's going to benefit me. It's going to benefit me because it's going to help me draw me closer to God. No intermediaries, no nothing. I make the bed I lie in. So after 120 years, we can't, God's going to say, okay, let's say we made it to the next world. And you get a little dinky portion. You say, what happened? Why do these people have greater portions? Well, let's see what you did in your life. Look what happened over here. You're lazy with this, lazy with that, lazy with the other thing. You made it here, okay? You made it to the big game. Very good. A lot of people aren't going to make it. But you made it. But you were lazy. And this happened. And that happened. And, who are we going to blame? We have nobody to blame. You're going to say, well, give me another chance. Let me come back to this world. Game over. Right? Game over. You're not coming back. Not going to happen. Right? Totally not going to happen. Right? This is the last time we're here. Most likely. So that's true. That's true. Then we have nothing to complain about. Because everything we did in this world, we did. And it's our fault. Well, you're going to say, this happened, that happened, the other thing happened. Okay. There are a lot of terrible things that can happen. Things that happen to us, things that we cause. Many things. Many, many things. Well, the question is, are we looking in the mirror and say, okay, I have to take responsibility for who I am? Every single person, whoever's going to listen to this, we're all created, says the Torah. Mankind is created in God's image. Everybody, Jew or non-Jew. Now the question is, what do we do with that divine image? What do I do with that soul that God's given me? What do I use it for? Wow and self-pity? Right? You can do that for a long time. I always say that, there are many, many things we have to be thankful for. Many things. Life itself. And if a person's healthy, they're lucky. They should thank, their lucky stars. Their body works, it functions. They don't necessarily have arthritis, even if they do, maybe, it doesn't hurt as much. There are many, many things to be thankful for. And we complain all the time, but what's the point? What's the point? The point is that I would always say, well, if God wanted, it could always be worse. We're not asking for it to be worse, right? We got to be thankful for what we have. We have to have unbelievable gratitude, right? And the way the evil inclination is going to say, well, you did this and you did that, so, screw you. God forbid. I'm going to do what I want to do. I want to be happy. I want this and I want that. But at the end of the day, we're given a golden opportunity. This world is a golden opportunity. Right? There's a parable. Person, walks on the beach and he sees as far as eyes can see in each side. He sees rubies, diamonds, all kinds of, expensive gems, money all over the place. And then he thinks, okay, how am I going to acquire all this? It's going to take a lot of manpower, a lot of dump trucks, this and that. By the time he figures out, what it's going to take, he's not going to bother. Why is he not going to bother? It's too much effort. Too much effort. So what do you say to such a person? You say, fool, go and grab whatever you can. Take those diamonds, rubies, emeralds, stick them in your pocket and cash them in. So what's the parable? What are the diamonds? What are the rubies? What are the emeralds in this world? Mitzvahs. Those are the diamonds. Those are the diamonds in this world. That's what we have. That's what we can attach ourselves to. That helps us get closer to God. Oh, but you're going to say, come on, there are a lot of other things in between. It's not just about singing and dancing more, right? It's not about just shaking my lulav with all this, all this intention. It's beyond that. It's having a direct connection with God. That's what we said before. No intermediaries. I can have that direct connection. How can I have that direct connection? Right? Someone's going to ask me the $2.5 million question because we're up in the ante as we always do. Right? So what's the $2.5 million question? How can I have that connection? I got to work. I got to work in this world. The Ramchal says in Path of the Just, I'm here in this world to toil. You think I'm going to be close to God? It's going to be so easy. Right? The famous story of the Baal Tanya. Right? The Baal Tanya had a student, want to go to university. So the Baal Tanya told him, you got to be careful. You go to university. It's a lot of heresy there and all kinds of terrible things. So his student told him, he said, Rebbe, don't get so upset. Because I hung around in your study hall, in your base medrash for years. I didn't become so righteous. So if I hang out with evil people, quote unquote, I'm not going to be so evil either. I'm not going to be such a heretic either. So the Baal Tanya said, you're making a big mistake. You're making a big mistake. And he said, impurity, touch a dead animal, dead body, you become impure by touch. How do you acquire purity? How do you acquire Torah? You got to absorb it. It takes time. It takes effort. It's not an overnight thing, right? There are plenty of people, myself included, look for the cliff notes. Look for the easy way out. There is no easy way out. I hate to break it to everybody. There's no easy way out. It takes a lot of effort. Tremendous amount of effort. That's what it does. Right? Tremendous amount of effort. And if not, okay, it's a struggle. Right? Definite struggle. Definite struggle. So if there's a struggle, okay, understood. What would I rather have? Have it so easy that I don't have to work hard and I'll just atrophy anyway? Because nothing is ever worthwhile if it comes so easy. But a person's going to say it doesn't have to be so hard. Right? It's just the opposite extreme. It doesn't have to be that hard. So, see, if God didn't care, we'd be like the snake. What do I mean? What did God do when he punished the snake and he cursed the snake? Chopped off its legs and he said, you always have food. What kind of curse is that? Imagine if God would say to us here, you're going to be cursed. We're going to give you, $100 million. Okay. Who's not willing to sign up? A lot of people will sign up, but why is that a curse? Because when a person has money and a person has everything at their fingertips, you don't need God anymore. You don't need to pray, right? God's telling the snake, get out of here, scram. I don't need you. I don't need your prayers. I don't need nothing from you. I'm not going to have anything to do with you. Because God's going to give him everything. He's going to say, see ya. He's going to say, sayonara, no connection. So, some people seem to have it easy and they don't, other ways they probably don't have it easy, right? But let's say, they have it easier in life, different things. What's God saying? What could be God saying? He said, I'm going to give you everything. I don't want to hear from you. Why do you think by the Reform and Conservative movements, they raise all kinds of money very easily, right? Year in and year out, the UJA, United Jewish Appeal, you know how much money they raise a year? Probably close to $500 million. Probably the biggest fundraisers in the world. And even if you tell me they give 6%, and that's what I saw years ago, they give 6% to education, let's say $30 million, not a small amount here, right? Let's say something like that, or $3-4 million, whatever it is. You're going to say, see, they give money to education, what's bad education? So why is it by yeshivas? Girls' schools, they always struggle because people have to raise money. Heads of the yeshiva, heads of these institutions have to go to places. They have to give strength to other people, right? They have to keep pushing nickels and dimes in order to keep their institution going so they can have an influence on others. Well, when God doesn't want these people to exist in the world, so to speak, God gives them everything in one shot. Everything in one shot. So, you can have these fancy reform conservative synagogues. They spend all this money, millions, put up this unbelievable edifice, and it's gonna come crashing down years later. Why is it gonna come crashing down? Because no one's gonna go to it. That's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be like a museum. 100%, it'll be like a museum, and that's it. Eventually, they'll sell it. Remember someone telling me recently, synagogue I knew about, growing up. Synagogue had like 2,000 families, 1,000 families, right at the peak, gone, sold. Why? Because you can't pass it down. Because they can't pass it down. So why does God give them plenty of money? In many ways, just to say, get out of here. I don't need you. I don't want your prayers. I don't want to have any connection to you. So if someone's going through a hard time, that's like a parent to a child. That's like a parent, having to discipline a child. So God has to discipline us. If he didn't care, guess what? He'd give us everything. He'd make it so easy. We don't have to do anything. And everything we do will turn to gold. I mean, eventually, person get knocked off, get knocked down. But, for a long time, let's say, person will have it easy. They'll have it so easy. So why is God going to do that? One possible answer is the fact he doesn't want to see you in the next world. He's not interested in your prayers. He's not interested in anything. He don't want to have anything to do with you. The fact that you're getting musser and you're having difficulty and you struggle in different ways, it shows God cares. That's what it shows. Now, if he didn't care, again, it'd make things easy. We wouldn't have to pray to him. We wouldn't need him, so to speak. But someone will ask, does it have to be that hard? And what's the answer? We don't know. God, has his calculations. He knows what he's doing. And if he would give us a glimpse, I had to go through this. Imagine, a person, let's say, someone hit their car, a car gets totaled, they come out without a scratch. But, they had to lose over here. Why do they have to lose? Because of certain things they might have done. So God takes away. So wouldn't we rather have things take away, suffer in this world, so we come squeaky clean in the next world? At least we don't have to suffer as much. What's the problem? Nobody wants to suffer. Nobody wants to go through it. What do we say every day? What do we pray every day? We say we shouldn't have trials and tribulations. Oh, it's catch-22. You don't have trials and tribulations, you don't grow. You don't grow. Right? So we'd rather not have trials and tribulations, but grow exponentially. That doesn't always work that way. Right? So one thing to take stock of is the fact that, we have to be thankful for what we have. And a lot of times we're not. We complain it's too hot, it's too cold, I need more money. This isn't good, that's not good. What about all the goodness? What about the gratitude? One of the worst things the Torah says a person should never, ever do, ever. What shouldn't they do is be ungrateful. If a person's ungrateful, and the Rabbeinu Bachai in Duty to the Heart tells us, right? It says the Chovos Levavos, right? What does he tell us? He says that we may not do a half, a quarter, a tenth of what we're supposed to do. And it's not so comforting, right? Even so, we got to put our best foot forward. So, isn't it true we're not doing really what we need to be doing at a much higher level, depending, again, the source of our soul, what we're doing here and all this? Couldn't God say, as we said before, like, what are you doing over here? You're giving me lip service. You're only here for a certain amount of time. You're only here for a short amount of time. King David says 70 years. We have strength 80 years. What are we doing? Wasting time. You're going to say, come on. How much time do you think I can put into learning? My head can't take so much. This, that. Okay. Person has to have, a certain level of downtime. This applies mostly to men, not to women. But, women also need to learn. Also need to live inspired. But regardless, there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of work to be done. And Mr. S puts all kinds of things in our way. Many, many things in our way not to do that. And to struggle and to want to blaspheme against God and say, hey, I'm working hard. I'm going in your ways. I'm doing the best I can. Why am I getting slammed? Why in the world am I getting slammed over here? Right? I'm doing all these things. So the first mistake is people think that just because I started working hard, and, going in the right path, that God's going to answer my prayers straight away. That's the first mistake. So, a person has to realize that, a person can pray, a person can work on things, whatever. And God can say, okay, I want you to work harder. I want you to strive more. Give an example. You take Sarah, Rivka, Rachel. What do they all struggle from? Infertility. They all struggle from infertility. Now, that being the case, commentaries say, why did God make them barren? Why didn't he allow them to have children or struggle to have children? Because God likes the prayers of the righteous. So someone's going to say, come on. God likes the prayers of the righteous and he wants to make them suffer. Nothing worse than a woman, can't have children. Most women, I don't know, it might have changed today, but most women at the very least want to have their own child. I know someone pretty much got burned by the system and probably will never have natural children. Tried, in vitro, other things, didn't work. Right? So they're probably not a candidate to have children, but they got burnt by the system. All this person wants is a child, to carry a child. Now, I had somebody tell me, somebody, I don't know, my age or older, and they said, is it a terrible thing for a non-Jew? It's a non-Jew. So I had no intention to ever have children, never had children. So I said, there's a command for non-Jews to have children, be fruitful, multiply, they don't have to have not the same command as a Jew, right? But that's a little bit strange. A little bit strange. A woman to say, I don't want children ever. That's strange, goes against what her nature is. Is that the only purpose of a woman? No, not the only purpose. But it's a major purpose, bringing life into the world. And if everyone thought like she did, we'd be in trouble. Wouldn't be any kids in the world. So, you take something like that, and, somebody wants something so bad. So why did God do it? Well, first of all, this person who I'm thinking of did it really to himself, really got burnt by the system, but imagine if they would just give their heart, give their soul to God and, pray day in and day out. Could God have done a miracle? Could have. Very well could have. Not unheard of. But they didn't do that. So in certain ways, they're bitter. They're bitter because they can't have kids. Can't have natural kids. Which I understand. Right? But, you talk about the matriarchs. Imagine what their prayers were like. Especially someone who so desired to have a child. Imagine. And you had by Sarah, you had by Rachel, they were willing to give over other women to their husbands. That's a huge thing. Just to have children through them. That's unbelievable self-sacrifice. Because they wanted to build up through them. But, a person prays a heck of a lot better. Not that we should. We should have to go through this. But a person prays a heck of a lot better when they're in dire straits. When their back is against the wall, no one else to turn to, they pray totally different. See, if everything's going good, a person's healthy, relatively speaking. They have livelihood, other things going okay. They don't pray the same as if their life depended on it. The reality is, how do you know that's going to continue till tomorrow? Well, King Solomon says in Proverbs, King Solomon says, you don't know what today's going to bring, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So how do you know everything's good today? What's going to be tomorrow? You don't know. You don't know. So how can we rest on our laurels that just because yesterday was good, tomorrow's going to be the same. And it's going to continue like that. No guarantees for nothing. Except death and taxes, not necessarily in that order. Those are the only two guarantees of life. So regardless, we have to know how to look at the world. We have to know what's going on, what the bigger scheme of things. What am I living for? So you're going to say, come on, this is a whole different thing. Got to change my whole mentality, okay? Takes time. We have to live and think the way God wants us to. You can say, well, it's a lifetime of work, okay? Got to start at some point. And we take baby steps. But undoing all the damage and all the things we've taught before, it takes time. It takes time to get rid of. But we have to realize, even if things are hard, no matter how hard things are, think about where we were 5 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and we see where we've gone. We've seen what we've gained, what we've learned. Does that mean we're perfect and we never speak Lashon Hara? No. Does it mean I'm perfect in other ways? No. But a person has to see. They have to see where they are. They have to be honest. I think most people will see that over the years they've learned so much that they take what they've learned and use as building blocks. Because look at most people in the world. What are most people in the world? What's the most important question they're ever going to ask in their lifetime? Ketchup or mustard or relish? Throw in relish on a hot dog. Relish, not going to win. It's either ketchup or mustard, and I'm going to say it's mustard. That's the most important question they're ever going to ask. So that I feel sorry for them, because they don't have real life. They only have life that's based on desire. That's all they have. You're going to say, but come on, such a strict life. It's so hard. Why would anyone choose it? Right? So if you're born a Jew, you don't choose it. This is what you have to do. If you're not born a Jew, why choose it? Because it makes the most sense. Because it's the truth. It's 100% the truth. A lot of people don't want truth. A lot of people want fantasy. A lot of people are happy with fantasy. Okay? Let's see, I would take my chances in this world knowing absolutely that, what I do matters. That there are repercussions. That I have to be careful what I say. Careful what I think. Careful what I do at all times. It's a huge responsibility. I hear non-Jews say a lot, oh, it's such an awesome responsibility. Got to think twice if I want to take it on. So my answer always is, halavai Jews would think such a thing. Halavai would see it's such a privilege. It's such an honor. It's such a responsibility. Instead of, God forbid, just going through the motions. Because we see a lot of that also, unfortunately. And we mentioned this many times as well. One of the worst sins a person can do is go do things by rote. We said before, that's akin to spiritual death. So at least we're ahead of the game. Right? We're ahead of the game over here. That we understand. We understand what I'm here for. We understand what I'm doing in the bigger scheme of things. Right? That we understand. But now you're going to say, Rabbi, I got to make it happen. Right? I have to make it happen. So you're going to say that's a lot more difficult. So I would say, as always, knowing the right thing to do and doing it are two different things. They're not the same. So there's a heart or mind to heart disconnect. 99% of the game, I would say today, is knowing what to do. Some people disagree with that. That's fine. Putting that into action, a whole different thing. Right? But most people don't know what to do. They don't have a clue what to do. They're too busy thinking about ketchup or mustard or relish on their hot dog. That's what they're thinking. That's where they're holding. So we have an awesome responsibility. Unbelievable obligation. What we're here for. What we're supposed to be doing. And how many, I'm sure plenty of people can say, well, I know what that responsibility is. You know what? And I struggle with this, I struggle with that, and struggle with the other thing. Okay, that's part of what it means over here. Doesn't mean it's going to go easy. Doesn't mean that's all life is. And most people would say, well, there are many things I didn't sign up for. Okay? It doesn't matter. We signed up for it or not. This is what God thinks is best for us. Or we did it to ourselves, which is even worse. Right? Because remember, the Ramban says in the book of Job, he says you can't blame God for everything because he's going to say, I didn't tell you to do this. I didn't tell you to go down this path. But this happened, that happened, it spiraled out of control. Okay? I didn't tell you to do it. Right? So we gotta be so very careful what we do. We don't want to take steps backwards. Taking steps backwards is bad. Imagine if a person does, the example is if a person does something wrong. It's like taking 2 steps backwards, which means I have to take 2 steps forward in order to get to where I was before. In order to get to 0. That's hard. And if you're 20 steps behind, 40 steps behind, you're going to say it's impossible to catch up. So again, what does the Mishnah in Perkei Avos say? The Mishnah in Perkei Avos says, it says in ethics for our fathers, mitzvah goreres mitzvah, vera goreres avera. The more mitzvahs I do, the more it causes me to do more mitzvahs. The more transgressions, God forbid, a person does, the more it's going to cause you to transgress. So you're going to say, so I have to do things positive. I have to keep growing. I have to keep going the way God wants. True. But aren't there stumbling blocks? Yep. Aren't there things that we've done that we could rip our hair out and say, I can't believe I did this. Can't believe I said this. Just undid 10 years worth of work in 35 seconds. They pick yourself up and you start again. Right? I mentioned yesterday, over Shabbos, I know of somebody, and I think, somebody went through a very hard time. Somebody who who became religious, became an Orthodox Jew, and then went back to the States. And after going back to the States, there was a lot of family pressure, tremendous amount of family pressure, right? Tremendous amount of family pressure, and family basically destroyed them. They put so much pressure that they felt they were put in a situation they couldn't handle. So that, is definitely a much bigger topic, which, we've really spoken about before, right? But I just want to throw out there that nobody, as we believe, nobody's ever been put in a position they can't handle. Now, we may think we can't handle it. We may think it's beyond us. We may think it's way too hard, okay? Right? Maybe that is true. Maybe that's what we think. Doesn't matter, right? Totally irrelevant, right? The reality is God knows what he's doing. We may think this is way too hard. This is impossible, right? Not only that, I didn't sign up for this. If I didn't sign up for this, why I have to go through it? We don't know. But what's the reality? The reality is I'm given an opportunity. I'm given an opportunity. Let's say a person has a dormant character trait that God wants to bring out. Now, in the normal scheme of things, it's never going to come out. It's never going to be utilized. So what does God do? God orchestrates it in a certain way that he says, okay, I want to extract from this person X character trait. It's buried deep inside. And at this rate, it's never coming out. So God can orchestrate it in a way, and it could be painful, like any extraction. It could be extremely painful to go through. But once it comes out and a person, now they have new knowledge because they've gone through different things. And by going through different things, what does it cause? It causes them to use inner strength they never thought existed. They never thought they had. Or let's say they could empathize with other people going through certain things, even if they didn't go through it, but if they went through it, so they're able to give it over in a totally different direction. Why? Because the person went through it. They struggled through it. Let's say they overcame it, or they still struggle through it, right? But they can commiserate. They can understand where the person's coming from, not just intellectually, but they can understand it soul to soul, so to speak, because they've now gone through it, and let's say they came out of it in however they came out of it. Or let's say they continue to struggle, whatever it is, but they're not the same person. They can't be the same person because now they've gone through something that they've never had to deal with. That's something major, right? We'll make it easy, not something minor. It's something major over here, but now they're able to help others and give others strength because they themselves went through it. Couldn't they given strength before? Even if they didn't go through it, it's not the same. It's not the same because they didn't go through it. They could empathize, they could commiserate in different ways. But the fact is, God, did something to them, extracted something from them in order, let's say, for them to help others. It's not just persons put in a situation, woe to them, and that's it, and God just beats them down, bam, bam, bam. Takes a sledgehammer, takes a Louisville slugger, smacks the heck out of them. Why do you do that? Someone will say, because, well, maybe there is no God, or maybe if there's a God, he's a masochist. No. Why did he do that? Why did he beat us silly in certain ways? Because he extracted that thing. And that thing, as painful as it was to come out, now let's say years later, a person now can give strength to others because they themselves went through it and they survived it somehow. Maybe they never thought they would, whatever the case is. Nothing happens for no reason, right? That is mentioned last night in Pirkei Avos. That we mentioned that when we say stuff happens, that is Amalek, right? Because the numeric value, every letter has a numeric value. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3. The numeric value of Amalek and Safek and doubt are one and the same. They're both the same. So what did Amalek bring to the world? Amalek brought this idea of no supernatural. No such thing as supernatural. Therefore, they brought atheism to the world. Atheism still very much in vogue today. Right? Many people will claim that they're atheists. So there's a mitzvah for Jews to wipe out Amalek on Purim. That's our job. But we don't know who Amalek is. We can't do it physically. But we can do by strengthening ourselves in Torah mitzvahs to believe not only there is a supernatural, but he runs the world and he's in charge and he causes everything to happen. Right? So if you look at Amalek, we're still living in that world. That world, unfortunately, is alive and well and is very strong. So our goal is to demolish it. Right? Because what does the evil inclination want to say over here? Right? You're getting beaten down in life. They say, see, nice guys finish last. You're working hard. What do you have to show? What do you have to show for yourself? Struggling this way, that way, the other way. And the evil inclination will be very good at slamming us and getting us to say, or God forbid, to say, yeah, maybe there is no God. Maybe stuff just happens. Maybe wrong place, wrong time. Maybe this, maybe that. Could be. Get the person to think. And when a person struggles and they go through difficulty, isn't that one of the first things that comes up? Why don't, if they would believe really in that God is good, well, why am I going through this? I'm trying hard. I'm working hard. Why? Why should I have to go through this? Why should it be so darn hard? What's the answer? We don't know. 100% we don't know. It could be any number of reasons. Right? But as we said before, if God didn't want to have any connection to us, what would he do? He'd give us millions of dollars, tell us to scram. That's what he would do. We'd have nothing to do with him. Right? We wouldn't have to pray to him. Right? Nothing. We wouldn't have any connection. Right? That's not life. You tell me, okay, I'll sign up for it, make life easier in some ways. True. But most people, if they have a lot of money, they're not connected to God. Right? They are not connected to God. So it normally does not go hand in hand. Right? Not saying that person, for sure has to be poverty stricken and suffer in that way. But usually Torah and money don't mix. Usually. There are very few people, if any, that the Gemara says inherited this world and the next. Meaning that they had money and they were still rabbinic scholars in this world. And they had a portion of the world to come. And a great portion of the world to come. But it doesn't always go. A lot of times it doesn't. Right? Money and Torah don't necessarily mix. But if a person knows how to use it and they use it for good things, it doesn't make them haughty, doesn't make them conceited, okay. But see, the evil inclination is going to work very hard and say, oh, God gave him this amount of money. What's he using it for? He's using it for himself, he's using it to help others. A person doesn't know how to use it. I saw brought down, I don't remember the source, but I did see brought down once that 1 in 1,000 rich people have a portion of the world to come. 1 in 1,000. Why is that? Because it's a big test. Money's a big test. It's a huge test. Huge test. You're going to help others with it, or you're going to buy stuff only for yourself. Huge test. Mishnah Perkei Avos, it says in Ethics of Our Fathers, who's truly rich? One who's happy with what they have. Not about money. Because we say, Arbi Nachasim, Arbi Darga. Person has a lot of property, he's going to worry. One explanation is going to worry. I was going to keep it. I was not going to lose it. Right? You have 200, you want 400. You have 400, you want 800. Never ends. Right? Even as King Solomon says, that even if a person has money, and he has a lot of money, money doesn't satisfy. Money never satiates. Because the more money you have, the more you want. There are people, that I know, or certainly that I've heard of. They're retired, got plenty of money, where they do open up another business. They can't get it out of their system. It's too much part of their psyche. So thank God, when I had money, I didn't use it for that. Hopefully I knew how to use it. Get, credit for knowing how to use it. But, a person wastes it and uses it for things that he shouldn't use it for when he could be helping others. It's a test. Get 20 people a day knocking on your door. Better they knock on your door for help than for other things. Right? And you have a person that has the ability to help. Okay, so a person doesn't have the ability to help, okay. Right? But, if a person has the ability to help and they don't, God can say, what do I give them this money for? Why, why do they have it if they're not helping others with it? Good question. Very valid question. So if a person has, they should give whatever they can give, within their means. Help others, help needy brides, schools, rabbinic scholars, whatever. A lot of good things to give to. And money shouldn't stay in your pocket. It should help others. Whatever a person can give. I'm not saying you have to put yourself in the poorhouse to do it. But a person should give. Should know how to give. Because if God gave someone plenty, he gave it to them for a reason. The reason is to know how to use it. And if they don't know how to use it, God can say, why'd I give it to you? I'll take it away. Or I'll make you waste it some other way. Some people leave it to dogs. Some leave it to other things. So, they could have a merit to give it to something worthwhile. I had a very rich relative, helped raise $100 million. $100 million, not all their money, other people's money as well. $100 million to give to a non-Jewish charity. So I would hope she got some credit for it in the next world. I would hope. But imagine $100 million, what that could have done for Jewish schools, for needy brides, for rabbinic scholars. Just the interest alone. If you could get 1% or whatever, what that could do on a yearly basis. But she didn't have the merit. She helped raise that money for a non-Jewish charity. Now, again, even if it's a valid charity, even if she'll get some credit for giving to a valid charity, she's a Jew first. She's 100% a Jew, as far as I know. Wasted. So why did God give that person that kind of money to raise and have all this money? Could be just to wipe them out in the next world. Could be just to waste it. Just to give it to them to waste. Okay? If a person doesn't have the merit to give, they don't have a merit to give. Or if they do and they give it to the wrong place, okay? I know people who raise all kinds of money for Arabs. It's Jews. Get non-Jews, right? Not interested in non-Jews at the moment. Jews raising money for Arabs that all they want to do is kill Jews. Boggles the mind. Boggles the mind. Okay, they also have free choice. They also have free choice. But imagine where that money could go. Imagine where that money could go. I don't have an answer. Could be God just telling them, okay, I want you to waste this money over here. You won't get mad. You won't get credit for it. Or I'll wipe you out for getting all this money and whatever. Wipe you out in the next world. You won't have a portion of the world to come. Okay? And, in a certain way, it boggles the mind. You got these leftists out there that's willing to back all kinds of things that go against what they stand for, what Judaism stands for. Totally against. Not only that, giving to people that want to annihilate you. That's what they want to do. Make no mistake. Someone asked, just throw this out there as well, that, someone asked about these, accords with Arab nations, with Israel. They're no lovers of Jews. Make no mistake. They're making money. Dubai's making a lot of money. Israelis going there. Whatever, Israel getting, I don't know, whatever they get, them coming here, different things, whatever it is. Why? So I got these Arab nations, sucking up to Israel, whatever. You say it's Trump's thing and Biden continue with it, whatever. But why? Not because of their love for us. They don't have love for us. In general, all the fake smiles, that doesn't matter. Why? Because there's a common enemy. Who's the common enemy? The common enemy is Iran. Right. In Saudi Arabia and all these places, no. We have a strong standing army. Right. And we pledge to help them if they get attacked. Oh, that's worth it. No matter how much they hate us in general. Right? It's a common enemy. They don't want to get destroyed. They want their riches saved. So they're going to suck up to us and vice versa. So we have a connection to them. So we'll help them. It's not altruistic. 100% not altruistic. No matter what anybody says and what the spin is. That's the truth. Not altruistic. There's a common enemy that they're terrified of. That they don't want them to come and attack them. That's what they're afraid of. So they'll befriend Israelis and all that in order for that to get protection. Protection money. It's not about love. They have no love. Right? They're going to be a thorn in our side till the end of days. The Muslims. Till the end of days. Their time is just about up. Right? Just about up. So it's going to be the beginning of the end for them. But they have love for us? No way. Not at all. It doesn't matter what they say, what their rhetoric is. It's kind of like the Arabs here. You hear what the quote unquote Palestinians say. They say one thing in English, something totally different in Arabic. Right? Depends who they're talking to. But everybody here knows what their plan is. Biggest leftists in the world. They can bend over backwards. We're not going to get political here. They can bend over backwards. Man, they'll still stab them in the back. That's just their nature. That's who they are. It's what they do. And that's going to be forever until the Messiah comes. Until the Messiah takes care of business. So it's not about altruism over here. It's about the fact we have a common enemy, right? And we can band together, and we can help them. If it wasn't for that, you think they'd have anything to do with us? Afraid for themselves. Makes perfect sense. 100% it makes sense. In that way. So again, one of the things we try and do and try and show over here is that we have to be able to see, what the bigger picture is. We have to understand what we're doing in this world. We have to understand how the world works, how I'm supposed to deal with the world, how I'm supposed to deal with trials and tribulations. And then the question is, go out and do it. It's like put up or shut up. You're going to say, but that's not an easy thing to do. You're right. I didn't say it was easy. Right? But, in order to know how to think like a Jew, we have to know what it means. We have to know what to do. That's the majority of the game. Knowing what to do. Doing it, okay. Right? But that's why, it's why we have these classes to flush these things out, to understand who I am, what I should be doing as a Jew or a non-Jew, right? Or JIT, whatever you want to say, right? A Jew in training. Whatever it is, whatever our obligations are, we have to do the best of our ability. We can't let anything stand in our way. We have to be, my language, I would say, we got to be like pit bulls. You just grab on for dear life. And you just keep going, no matter what. It's like trying, let's say, a rainstorm, unbelievable rainstorm, winds, 100 miles an hour, 80 kilometers an hour, whatever it is. And you're trying to go through this rain and you're being pushed back, but you have to get to this destination, whatever it is. You're gonna sit there and give up? No, you're gonna try and figure out a way how to push your way through. That's what life is. That's what we have to do. Right? And we have to hold on to God as much as possible and what he wants from us. And, to live our lives at that level, which again, all things being equal, is hard. It's definitely not easy, no question. But at the end of the day, as we said before, which we got totally off topic here, but what do we say before? All these things, right? These two goats are going for the same thing. They're going to service of God. One's going to sacrifice. The other is, going to go off the cliff, so to speak. But the whole point is they're both for one purpose. They're both for one purpose, and that is doing God's will. And that's our job. That's our job, to do God's will, to the best, certainly to the best of our ability. And that's what we're here for. Are there going to be bumps in the road? Yeah. Are there going to be difficulties? Yeah. Are we going to be doing things that are going to make us smell like a rose? No. Damage control. Right? Many times, it'll just be damage control. Right? So, I can tell you, personal experience being in all kinds of different situations. I did what my rabbis told me to do. I didn't come out smelling like a rose. The best I could do in many cases was damage control. It's okay. How much damage control can you do? They're going to say, well, that's not a fair hand. That's like having two hands behind your back and say, okay, go ahead, smack me again. Smack me again. There's only certain things you can do. Right? That's it. You have to deal with the hand you're given. Right? But a lot of times people are going to say, oh, come on, you really think this? You really think that? You did this, you did it. What are you going to do? God said I can't do it. It's forbidden. Yeah, but I think, okay, think what you want. I don't believe it. It's not what my sources say. You want to look up the sources, look them up. You don't? Okay. But that's close-minded. That's this. Okay. I never claim to be open-minded. Right? But these arguments, you never win. unless someone is like open-minded enough. You never win. You absolutely never win. So you take your lumps, but guess what? God and the angels are smiling. They're smiling because you stuck up for what you believed in. You did what you needed to do, regardless of the repercussions. And there could be severe repercussions, okay? I've heard plenty of stories. People become religious. They want to become Jewish. The family drops them like a hot potato. It can happen, as a Jew as well. It's unfortunate, but it happens. I would probably say it happens more often than not. So much for being open-minded, right? But okay. So you say, well, I wasn't close to my family anyway, whatever, but what if someone was? And they just got dumped like a hot potato. Don't have anything to do with them, they ostracize them. Okay. What are you going to do? Choose family over Torah? So, case I mentioned before, this person got clobbered by family, got demolished by family, and they gave in. They felt they were in a position they couldn't handle, and it was too hard. They had no support, didn't really have community support or rabbi support or anything. They caved in. That's what happened. So thank God I had a lot of support. And I had a lot of support. Everyone out there, give as much support as I can, but family doesn't necessarily come along. And it can be painful for some people that are close to family. Again, the person not close to family, okay, there's just another wedge. This is just, another wedge over here. That, okay, you're stuck. It just makes it more difficult now. Okay? So a person, I guess I'll end with this, I'll take questions, because I know I've been going on here for 2 hours. But, imagine you're playing poker. Person's playing poker, and what's your hand? You got a 2, you got a 4, you got a 6 and a 5. You got nothing. You got garbage. That's the hand you've been dealt with. And that's what you're going to deal with. You got garbage around you. That's what it is, unfortunately. Family is an albatross, as Kaufman would say. Family's everything and this and that. Forget it. Right? It's a big misnomer. We don't choose who our family is. Fine. But the reality is it causes a lot of pain. So, I always say, I could use like another hole in my, put another hole in my head that I don't need. What I need more aggravation for. I'm not going to say it's not painful. You want to show them the light, this and that, and all they do is make fun and stamp on you. So what are you going to do? I could stick my head in the sand, be like an ostrich, could do that. But again, what was the greatest advice I was ever given? That these people should be in Sing Sing, in a locked up in an insane asylum in a white jacket. That's what they should be, because they're insane. I mean, you hear some of the things they say, it is insanity. It is insanity. No question. And these people are nuts. And they talk a good game, in some ways. Oh, I can't believe this. I can't believe. Well, do you ever study about it? No. Study philosophy? No. Jewish philosophy? No. Torah? No. So what are you arguing about? You don't know anything about this topic. I read a Wikipedia article. Thank you very much. What does the person need it for? You're telling me they're going to ostracize you. Okay. So you minimize family relationships. Okay. That's what it is. Is that what the religion's supposed to do? No. We mentioned before, it's like reconnecting. We're reconnecting the link in the chain back 2,000 years. More. Okay. They don't see it that way. They broke the chain. They don't want to admit it. Whatever. But see, we all need strength. We all need strength. Because we get beaten down. We hear that, you think, you Orthodox, you got a chip on your shoulder, this, that. No, we believe we're right. Prove me wrong. I always throw that out there. Show me. Show me where it's wrong. They're not interested. They're not going to even get into the discussion. Well, I think this. Okay. That's the answer. You don't argue with them. It's a waste of time. Christians are 10 times worse. 10 times worse. Then they'll throw a different verse. Oh, but it means this, it means that. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. What? Like argue with a missionary. Get nowhere. You get nowhere. Now, when I say a person has to automatically cut off relationship, no. But it's usually what happens. What's the litmus test? Litmus test is, let's say you go to a family member's house, you don't eat there. It's not Shabbos, not a festival, whatever, you don't eat there. That's it. That's a litmus test. Once you don't start eating by them anymore, what you used to eat and what you used to do, yeah, that's it. It's just it's just downhill after that. Now, then in certain situations like that, well, can't you just eat this? No. It's not kosher, not whatever. Listen, if you wanted to make it kosher, you could have made it kosher. You didn't. Okay. I'm not going to starve. Right? I got what to eat. Don't worry about it. But they feel bad. And they feel guilty. Okay, you could have done something. I'm not saying you had to. But you're one person out of 40. Okay. So what are you arguing about? I didn't tell you to do anything. I'm just saying I can't eat it. And I won't eat it. So you're trying to make me feel bad. Something you could have done. You didn't want to do it. Okay. I'm not hammering you. I'm not saying you should have done it. You should have accommodated me. You don't want to. Okay. It's your choice. Totally your choice. I went somewhere, people eating whatever they're eating. I brought my own food. So said, oh, can I have a little of that? I said, no. You got your own food. Don't mooch off me. You want to eat this garbage? Eat it. Don't make me feel bad. Yeah, I didn't feel bad. So I said, whatever. We're put in all kinds of situations. You can write a book on it. Different things people have said, things done, situations. You don't win. You just don't win. Okay. So I gave up a long time ago. I say what I have to say. I do what I have to do. You don't like it. What did my Rebbe say? Go eat kugel. You don't like it. Too bad. That's the way it is. Certain things I can't do. If I had a relative, 90-year-old relative, a woman, cousin, whatever, I'm not going to hug her. Just not going to. It's forbidden. Oh, come on. She's an old lady. She's this. What do I care? The Torah says I have to give up my life in order to do it. Really? Come on. That's fanaticism 101A, 101B. That doesn't make sense. Have you learned anything, you moron? Do you know anything? Can you read Hebrew? No. Can you read a prayer book? No. Can you read anything? No. So what are you arguing about? Doesn't fit my world outlook. Do I care if it fits your world outlook? Seems very good therapy for me, right? Does it fit your world outlook? It doesn't. So what are you hocking me for? What are you hocking me for? It's a painful thing. I'm not going to say not. I feel bad. Many people in my family are going to get flushed down the toilet spiritual. That's what's going to happen. They're not going to listen to me. Okay. It's their choice. Doesn't mean I don't feel bad. It's not going to change. I don't think it's ever going to change. And I don't feel guilty about it. Maybe I should, but it's only certain amount you can do. You can't bring the person to drink. You can't bring him to the trough and drink. What are you going to do? There's nothing to do. And they're going to say, well, you've changed. We haven't changed. You ostracized yourself. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? That tells you that they're doing it to you. I thought one of the greatest lines I ever said was, I'm just reconnecting, to a chain that goes back 3,000 years. So let's say America broke that chain. So I'm reconnecting to that chain. No, they say you change, you're a fanatic, this, that. That's it, it's game over. You going to win an argument like that? No. Are they ever going to listen to what you have to say? No. What's the point? Or someone will say, we can agree to disagree. Okay. That doesn't mean anything either. I'm not going down that path. You're right, because I'm going to flush you. Right? Because I have what to say and you're not going to listen. Okay. Most cases it's a waste of time. And the person may get ostracized. It just, I would say probably most of the time. And it's painful. Especially if you had a good relationship before. It's painful to hear what you're going to hear just based on ignorance. One of my personal pet peeves. You're going to argue, okay. Don't just tell me this is what I think. Show me a source. Show me something. Show me you know something. Don't just say, well, I think this. And that's only your religion. That's only what you believe. Okay? But it's based on 3,000 years of scholarship, isn't it? They don't have a leg to stand up, but they're not going to argue in the same terms. So it's a waste of time. If they say, listen, why this, why that, they really want to know, okay. right? So, you can have a discussion. But most people don't want to have a discussion. They're not interested. So what do? Not much to do. You move on with your life. I'm not going to say it's not painful. It could be painful. But that's, a lot of times that's what happens. That's what happens. I'm going to stop there. Let me see if there are any questions here. Someone asked, does a Jew in training have to live within an Eruv to be sponsored by a rabbi? Most likely, right? It depends how close. Depends how close. In other words, even, they have to live within walking distance of a synagogue. Now, does that mean it's within, that's within the Eruv or not? I don't know. Depends how close, right? But certainly, a sponsoring rabbi is someone on the ground that can vouch for you to say you keep Shabbos, you keep kosher, this and that. Can they be out? It depends how far they are from an Orthodox synagogue. And that you would have to ask. That you would have to ask a rabbinical court. How far that is. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to live within that amount, so to speak. They have to live within that close, right? They have to live within walking distance of a synagogue, right? So how far is that? A mile? Maybe a mile and a half. I think, more than 2 miles, I think is too far, but it depends what the rabbinical court, what the basin will say. Someone asks, when the Noahide law is going to affect? They were passed down from Adam to Noah, but solidified by the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai. So there is a whole question without exasperating the topic, and that is that there's a whole question who the patriarchs were before the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai. Were they considered Jews or Noahites? And there are a lot of ramifications. Now, the Gemara says patriarchs kept the Torah before it was given. The whole question exactly what that means. What that means exactly. But before the Torah was given, definitely seems that the Jews kept more of the Noahide laws. You see that, some aspects of Shabbos were given in the desert before the giving of the Torah. Right? But that's a whole loaded question, only because, they weren't Jews before the giving of the Torah. Even though the Torah calls Abraham Ivri, doesn't mean he was Jewish. It means, he wasn't Jewish yet. There's no Torah given, right? So Ivri means on the other side, meaning he was on one side and idolatry on the other, right? So, major difference. But the question is, if they kept the Torah before it was given, then you get a lot of questions. Because if they're really considered Jews, or they did things like Jews before the Torah was given, there are a lot of questions, right? 2 questions I'll just throw out there. One is, Jacob's not allowed to be married to 2 sisters. That's one question. Second question is, how is Tamar allowed to be with Yehuda? Also forbidden relationship, right? There are a number of questions if they are considered Jews, how you answer certain things up, right? But, many hold they had the status of Noahites before the Torah was given, 100% before the Torah was given, right? But we do know that patriarchs instituted certain things. Abraham instituted the morning service, Isaac the afternoon service, right? Jacob the evening service, right? There was Erev Tavshilin, making, having an egg and a piece of matzah, making a blessing on it if a holiday falls out on Thursday and it goes into Shabbos, right? There are a number of things before the Torah was given. Doesn't mean they held by all of them. Listen, they say by Lot. Rashi says when people want to come in and abuse the angels and abuse his guests, it was Passover. So you see, held by Passover. They had matzah, right? So, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what they were before. There's a whole book written on it, never been translated. I've never gone through, which actually be a good thing for me to go through. But to go through all these different scenarios of what the Jews were before. Right? Marabi does a pretty good job of that also. In one of his commentaries on Chumash. Asks a lot of questions according to halacha, according to the parsha. A lot of good questions. I mean, he doesn't need me to agree with him, right? A lot of good questions about, about these type of things. I'll give one other example. Jacob marries Rachel, but he wakes up, he finds out it's Leah. How's he allowed to stay married to her? He didn't have intention for Leah, he had intention for Rachel. So if he kept the Torah, that goes against a number of precepts in Kedusha, right? In marriage, right? There are a lot of questions, a lot of questions like that. So many rabbinical authorities will say there were Noahites before the Torah was given. That would answer up a lot of them. 100%, that would answer up a lot of them. Others would say, there are certain things that maybe have the status of Jews. The question is how to work out these different questions. Yeah. Any other questions? Was Abraham considered? Someone asked, was Abraham considered the first convert? He's considered the father of all nations, right? So I guess, listen, he converted, men and women, he had all these converts. So yeah, could be. Could very well be. He's the first. Right? Because, even though he had great people before him, were they considered, would they be considered converts? No. I mean, considered no. The question is what conversion looked like back then. Right? But, at the time of the Torah being given on Mount Sinai, so we hold everybody was converts by then. Right? You only had the 7 Noahide laws. And then you had, you had another 606, right? That's the gematria, numerical value of tzitzis. Right? Tzitzis is 600, I think it's 611. No. One second. It's 400, 1 second. Saudi is 90, 95, 80. 600, 606. So if that's true, I think that's right. I did the math right. So yeah, 606 tzitzis represents all the Torah, right? All the mitzvahs, plus another 7. Right? What were the 7 Noahide laws? That's what we got on Mount Sinai. So many hold we were converts at Mount Sinai. So the question is, do we look at Abraham as the first convert? I don't know. I don't know if he was necessarily the first convert. Well, certainly wasn't the first Jew. Right? Well, if we hold that he wasn't, if we hold he kept the Torah before it was given, then he's only lacking certain things, I guess, to be a Jew. So could it be a convert? Maybe. Right? Maybe we'd say that. Because even if he kept the Torah before it was given, he wasn't necessarily a full-fledged Jew at that point. Not him, not Isaac, not Jacob. But again, it's the whole question. Exactly what it was. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, no question. I'm going to sign out. Next Sunday is going to be the 9th of Av, or actually the 10th of Av. 9th of Av comes out on Shabbos, so we're not going to fast on Shabbos, but the next Sunday is going to be a fast day, so there won't be any classes. There won't be any classes on Sunday due to the fast, the 9th of Av, so you guys have to wait another week. Otherwise, I'm going to sign out. Anyone that has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, or Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a good beginning of the day.